afraid, got nothing to lose. Living life with nothing to prove. I'm gonna be a better version of me.
What's going on, folks? It's your boy again, Dr. Sean Thomas, in the building with episode 36 of the Be More Today show. We are back. And folks, I got to tell you, I'm so excited. This has been such an incredible weekend. A nervous week, but an incredible weekend. Before we get into it, I just want to thank all of our Be More Today fans, our friends and family for watching us and supporting our show. We've been doing so many amazing things. We see you on Facebook. We see you on Instagram giving us love, and we really appreciate it. Again, our Be More Today website is BeMoreToday.com, where we have our book, our music, our podcast information, Works for Life, which is on Wednesdays, and our workouts are on YouTube every single week. And folks, I got to say, this year, we're going to be doing a virtual 5K, which you're going to hear about literally, if you haven't heard about it already, it's online. It's called the New Year, New You Virtual Run, January 1st. It's a virtual run that we're doing everywhere. But if you are in the Brooklyn or Tri-State area, we're going to be meeting in Prospect Park doing that run on the first day of the new year, January 1st at 12 o'clock. So visit BeMoreToday.com for more details. You can sign up. You can run with us. We have some swag on there that you'll like. We call it More Swag. And join our Strava group on Be More Today. If you have Strava, it's the Be More Today group. You can go on there and join us. We are growing, folks. Be More Today show is now heard in 28 countries. And it's all thanks to your support and your love. We really appreciate it. So our donors who are on there, our supporters who are on there, we thank you, we thank you, we thank you, and we thank you. My quotation for today is always simple, and it says, growth is never by mere chance. It is the result of forces working together. James Cash Penney. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know where you are. I don't know where you were. But November 7th was the day that I think we're going to hold in our hearts for a very, very long time. We have now confirmed the election of President, soon to be President, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I don't know where you were, but literally I was outside. I came outside because I heard honking and horns and people yelling. And I was like, what's going on? And I recognized that something had happened. Everyone turned on the news because it's always been bad news for the last 7-8 months, right? We see people honking. It's been for first responders or people who have been helping us during these times. But to hear honking and cheers and screams, I was so pleasantly relieved to hear that it was something that was good, so that was positive. And I am so excited that the new administration is now officially intact and in office, and it's going to be a great thing to see. And I don't know about you guys, but it's great to feel like America does feel great again, that love does trump hate. And, you know, as a father of a biracial daughter who is half Indian and half South Asian and half African-American, Afro-Caribbean, it's amazing and invigorating and inspiring to watch Kamala Harris on screen, on TV. So I'm inspired. I'm very excited. And I know there's no perfect president. There's no perfect person. Even whatever job you do, you're the best at it. You may be great, but you're not perfect. We all make mistakes. So say what you want to say, hear what you want to hear. This is going to be great for America. It's going to be great for uniting people who have been divided for the last 4 years, for making people feel at home again in their own country. And as a person of color, as a male, as a black man, as a father, I'm just happy that America was heard and that the votes did not lie, and that we now can actually move forward knowing that we as a country can start to rebuild America back to how it needs to be. So I'm super excited. I could do a whole podcast about this kind of stuff, but I'm just super happy that we came together and got this thing done. And my guest for today is someone who I know shares that same enthusiasm. He's a friend of mine. He's an elder. He's so many things. He's a podcast buddy of mine. His name is Ryan Sharpe. Now, Ryan Sharpe has been practicing law for 16 years. He currently serves as a public defender in Dutchess County, representing individuals charged with crimes who are unable to afford legal representation. He and his wife, Christine, an educator, are parents to 3 children and many others by informal adoption. He's also the host of the What a Word podcast, which has been very successful and currently features weekly inspirational stories and conversations. Ryan believes everyone can be great because everyone can serve. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, pets included, please welcome to the stage my guy, my elder, my Mohawk Frohawk buddy, Ryan Sharpe. Ryan, what's up, man?
Sean, thank you, man. Thank you so much for having me, man. I went from anxiety to excitement. I'm excited to be on here with you today.
Oh my goodness, I've been trying to get you on the show for a while. You and I, hey man, we're friends. We met at Kingsborough Temple. For those who don't know, we mention this temple, I think, on both of our podcasts pretty frequently because it's just it's an infectious place with so many individuals who are doing great things. So it's kind of unfair sometimes recognizing the amount of talent that is in one building. But we met during a time where we both were elders. I was a new elder. You were a more seasoned elder. And I learned a lot from you just watching how you interacted with people and with our congregants.
Thank you, man.
The way you carried yourself. And even as a father, we have daughters who are similar ages, but your kids are a little older than mine are, or my daughter is. And I just appreciate your work. You and my wife do similar work as in criminal defense attorneys and public defenders. Although we're in Brooklyn and you're not anymore, you now live where I used to live in Orange, in the upstate Hudson Valley area. So we share a lot of similarities. You now going to my church and you do so many things. We connect, and everything from our hairstyles to our podcast. I'm just really excited for all you've done, and I'm happy to have you on the show.
Thank you, man. The privilege is mine. Thank you so much.
No problem. So as I asked everybody, how are you doing? What's going on with you and your family? And I always do COVID-19 checks, but I want to do a COVID-19/election check to see what's going on with the Sharpe family in Dutchess County.
Oh, man, Sean, I feel, and thanks again, man. You're doing a tremendous job, and listeners should just know Sean has been a tremendous resource to me with my podcast. Every question I could think of, I asked Sean. And unlike with the Fitbit movement, he's not competitive with the podcast thing. I remember giving him my numbers with my Fitbit, and he's like, I like it, but I'm not impressed. But, but with podcasting, man, he's been a true mentor. Thank you so much, Sean. But to answer your question, COVID and the election, man, I felt yesterday like I could finally breathe. I was unaware of the level of, I guess you would call it, post-traumatic stress disorder people had been undergoing just with the leadership we currently have. And yesterday's announcement was a culmination of the voter registration drive, young people coming out, parents like you and myself just wanting to see the country have a more positive direction. And I think yesterday, like you identified in the introduction, just merged that together. And I'm hopeful for the next 4 years. In terms of COVID, like many families, we had been on lockdown for a while. Kids were out of school, and my wife and I were working from home. On or about July, I returned back to work in court and been active ever since with mask on. The kids are back in school with brief interruptions here and there, but for the most part, they're in person. But we've done, better than most in terms of our pivoting because, we have jobs that allowed us to stay home and work. And my wife is a teacher, so naturally with the Zoom and the Seesaw and the different apps that the kids were. I have a 2 9-year-old, my nephew, my daughter, they're both 9 and my son is 6. And so we were trying to maneuver that, and I was able to do that mostly due to my wife's help. So we've been managing, man.
Amazing. Yeah, I know Seesaw very well. Our daughter's school uses that, and it's great to see the kids who are actually in school, be in school. It's just different. As you know, when they're in school, it's just a different vibe than just sitting at home and having the Zoom. So I appreciate for all the educators, and of course, Christine, educator. We appreciate her and all the hard work she's been doing during this time. Ryan, I know that we have so much to talk about. I know you have Jamaican roots, but I don't know exactly where in Jamaica you are from. So give me the backstory of, where you're from originally and how you came or when you came to the U.S.
All right. So I was born in Kingston, Jamaica. Most know it as the city area of Jamaica. Born there in 1972 to my mom, Gwen Cameron, and my dad, Neville Sharpe. I only learned after my dad's, because I lived with my mom. Then when she migrated here in the early 80s, I was staying with aunts. I would have contact with my dad, visit him on the weekends, what have you. And our relationship got better as I got older. And then I migrated here in 1986. And I kept in touch. I visited the island often, as you can hear in my accent. It's still very strong. But started high school here in 1986 in Mount Vernon, and did college, law school, did most of my schooling here. But I only learned after my dad's passing. He passed from pancreatic cancer in 2017, December. And I learned then that he was 19 when he had me as when I was born. And so there was a lot I didn't understand about our relationship while he was alive, but it kind of made a lot more sense then, because he was 19. So naturally he was trying to figure the parenting thing out. But I look a lot like him. My mannerisms, everything matches him. My mother is also very laid back and very gentle. So between both of them, I inherited this gentle disposition. But Kingston born, came here in my early teens, and lived in the States, United States, longer than I lived back home.
Amazing. I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I knew you were from Jamaica. I've been to Kingston countless times. My best friends are from Kingston. I think all my best Jamaican friends are from Kingston. So we've been there a number of times, and we love it. And it's just a place where, my family's from Barbados and St. Kitts. I've been there before. It doesn't feel like home to me because I'm not from there. But to have a place that's over there that feels like home, I know it just feels different. And I don't know. I'm going to ask you now, I guess. Looking at America, now that you've been here and seen all the things that have been happening for years on end, does America feel like home to you, or does Jamaica still feel like home?
That's a good question. America feels like home with all its beauty, its challenges, its imperfections. America is home to me. Jamaica is also home naturally because, I have family there. A lot of my history, my early formative years, began there as well. But in terms of my life in America, I think like most other African Americans, I went through a maturation process. I came here not really understanding the evils of racism or that it would impact me. I thought because of the way I was raised that with the Civil Rights Act, etc., those were vestiges of the past and in the past. And, I'm learning now because of where I live. I live in a more diverse community. I didn't recognize how segregated my life had been prior to moving upstate New York. High school was diverse, but and law school to an extent, but where I lived was primarily composed of Caribbean or African Americans and maybe members of the Latinx community. But I'm still learning about how racism has evolved. When I learned about it in Jamaica, we learned about it as a real heart issue, that if people could just love, then we would be fine. Everybody would be on a level playing field. Within the last number of years, I've learned about, or understood truly systemic racism, white supremacy, generational wealth, the things that really impact how people live. And just with the administration we have now, just seeing how people fought to maintain, issues like voter suppression and just the levels of police brutality and the responses from our government when marginalized communities looked for empathy and looked for solutions. I mean, I'm still learning, Sean, about life in America, but for all intents and purposes, it is home for me and it is home for my family, and Jamaica as well, still home. So I'm living in both places, and both places I consider home, but America for the most part is home.
Gotcha. Now, I've been to Jamaica a number of times. I've been to Portland. I think Portland is probably one of the most beautiful places in Jamaica. But you and I share the similarity now of having lived in Hudson Valley. My family being primarily from Orange County, and yours now in Dutchess County. And we live somewhat opposite lives in the sense that for most of my maturing ages, I was around a lot of people who were not like me. The situation that you're in right now, I was primarily in that situation all through middle school and high school and even college, going to school in Rhode Island. Rhode Island is Rhode Island, you know what I mean? It's New England. And now that I'm in Brooklyn, I've been in Brooklyn since 2007, which is a long time, 13 years being here. I'm surrounded, like you said, by that melting pot of so many people, so much diversity, and really living in an Afro-Caribbean area for most of my entire 30s and now going into my 40s. It's just interesting to see, like you said, that perspective changes. And I'm curious to know, based on your history and your growing up, why you chose law and why you chose criminal defense in particular, looking at all the things that we just talked about in terms of how we see America and where you came from and when you are now, or where you are now. Why criminal defense, and what was your journey to actually go through law school to get to that route?
Very good question. In my senior year of high school, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and there was a section in the book where he indicated that he believed for some of the solutions in America, people needed to be engaged in the practice of law. I think he wanted to, or he indicated if he had had the opportunity, he would have, wanted to become an attorney, because he believed that some of the challenges and some of the solutions could come through the judicial system. So it piqued my interest in law. And like most young people, I had, watched the movies and just seen how attorneys had change the lives of individuals, whether they were representing wealthy clients or, what piqued my interest were those individuals who represented people charged with criminal activity. And so I saw that vision for my life in high school. And so after high school, I went to a college, John Jay Criminal Justice, where I was exposed a little bit more to the different areas of law. And I had actually gone into John Jay thinking about law school after, preparing myself for law school. And then, once John Jay, I finished my bachelor's to go on to law school. But in between, I started thinking about maybe doing social work, because I saw within social workers and the coursework that I did in college, that empathy and that understanding that people were, for the most part, a product of their experiences. So that piqued my interest. And I had an uncle who I had told about, my desire to do social work. And he says, man, you're not going to make any money. If you want to buy a home, you should do law. And so just that conversation had me shift to law school. But in hindsight, I could have accomplished many of the same things. My work now is actually a hybrid between law practice and social work. And in terms of your question, how did I get into criminal defense? Criminal defense was always an interest, but how I was placed here, it actually chose me. And it's a story of just how I was doing private practice for a number of years, maybe 14 and change, doing general practice, representing people in closings, landlord, tenant, doing wills, trust, and matrimonial, family law. I was doing pretty much everything, but I wasn't a good business person. I was pretty much charging people based on what I thought they could afford, not on my worth. Because in law school, we don't get coursework that teaches us how to run a business. So I was at wit's end. I didn't know which way to turn. I had a young family. My wife was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And I had a colleague who was in the Hudson Valley, Dutchess County area. She saw an ad and told me about it, and I responded to the ad and had a few interviews. Didn't get the position I wanted initially, but a few months later, they called me and told me they had a better position for me. And it required, my work now is as a public defender. and I represent individuals who are charged with crimes, and many of them are unable to afford legal representation. So under the Sixth Amendment, everyone has a right to counsel when they're, charged with a criminal act. So the county employs public defenders here who will represent individuals, and we have so many courts in Dutchess County. So I'm honored and privileged to serve in the city of Poughkeepsie and another town court, and I represent individuals with felonies, misdemeanors, violations, and most of them are unable to afford legal representation. So criminal defense shows me the way I'm practicing it now wasn't what I envisioned, but it was certainly what I desired. So I'm happy to be doing it the way I'm doing it.
I understand that. And, as I'm married to a defense attorney, as you know, she'll be the last guest on this show for the season. But the work you guys do is it's incredible. It's giving back, clearly. And I've heard many people talk about it, similar to the work that Christ had to do when he was here, being the voice for the people. And, whether you believe in Christianity or what have you, there are a number of people who have that same mantra, that same life to go out and be the voice for other people. So it's captivating to see the passion that you have to have for this particular line of work. I know I see it in my wife every day. I see it in you, and it's just captivating to me. And I wanted to know now, in terms of now that you've established yourself in the Hudson Valley, what was the inspiration to go private? Because I know even doing law can be challenging, right? Working for a firm or working on your own, but in any kind of business, whether you're doing physical therapy or law, being on your own can be somewhat daunting. It can be somewhat, scary, saying that I now have to make sure that I'm taking care of our family, and there's no one who's going to take care of that or take care of us, take care of me besides me right now. So what was that transition like for you, and what sparked you going on your own?
Great question. And just in terms of true transparency, my practicing privately was my not waiting on God. I got to be honest with you. I'd had some challenges getting through the bar exam. It's a story I tell often, but it didn't happen for me quickly. In truth and honesty, it took me a number of times to pass the bar exam. I took that exam 6 times before I passed. And once I passed, prior to passing, I'd been doing some contract work, where you'd look at privilege documents for law firms who are preparing for trial. And that was how I was getting by before I got licensed as an attorney. So once I passed, I was doing the application thing, the cover letters, and I got so impatient with the process. Nothing was really coming through for me in that short time, because it wasn't a long time. And so I had reached out to find out if there were private attorneys who were looking for associates. And I didn't understand the world of practice. And so there was a willing attorney who had a small practice who says, sure, you can come, you can observe, you can sit in my office, you can see how I interact with clients, and we can do that. But there was no discussion of income. So I was excited for the opportunity, but I hadn't addressed, my need to pay bills, and, the student loans were kicking in, etc. So I hadn't discussed that. So after a few months of doing that, I recognized that notwithstanding the stipend I was getting, I wasn't being fair to my employer or to myself. So I had some open files, people had, from the church, wherever, had said, Ryan, I need your help with buying a home, what have you. So the employer and I agreed to part ways. And I had all these files, and I had no office space. So, I was doing the meet at home thing, the meet in the car thing, signing contracts in the car. And finally, someone says, Ryan, for you to do this effectively, you got to get an office, get you a phone line. And so I got an office space, and it started from there. So the client I represented on a home purchase would have, maybe a divorce. So I would represent the client in the divorce, or they had a custody issue. They needed a will done. So from one area of law and getting help doing the classwork, asking seasoned attorneys, I was branching off into all these areas.
Mm.
So, started off with open files to suddenly having my own practice.
Mm. I appreciate you sharing the test taking struggle. You and I shared that story together, and I knew you when I was going through my own struggles with my board exam, and it's not an easy thing to share with people who don't understand the struggle, because a lot of people, for the most part, take these things and they pass it no problem. But there are a number of people who, call it what you want, not the best test takers, anxiety, what have you. A number of reasons why people have an issue with taking tests. It's not so much about competency. It's really just about other factors that are in place that prohibit you from getting to that place. And, I took my board exam 12 times and you took it 6. And I remember when I was taking it, I don't know what number was when I was taking mine and I spoke to you about it. But I remember you encouraging me. You were one of the people who would say, look, I took my test 6 times. I would have never known that unless we had had the conversation. And even for me sharing that at that time, I said, because you don't want to tell people because they're going to look at you different. They're going to question your what you're doing, if you actually know what you're doing at your job, all these different things. But I was pretty set that if I shared, it would help someone else, or at least help me to get through the struggle. And I remember when you told me that, it encouraged me. It encouraged me to know that, okay, well, here's this guy, he's doing his thing, and I would have never known that he had gone through this. So I got to keep pushing. And I think I had gone past number 6 already by the time I was talking to you about this. But I do remember you encouraging me during that time. And I encourage others now with the same thing, just because people are going through this thing. I have some friends of mine who are doing the same thing. It's a struggle. But again, once you get past that struggle, it's all good. So
I can confirm your encouragement, man, because when I had you on my podcast, you told that story and a listener reached out to me and he says, man, I appreciate what Dr. Sean Thomas said about his struggles, because those are stories that need to be told, because so many people see successful people, at the end or near the end, but they have no idea. So the gentleman who reached out to me, and I should have shared that with you, because they send me text. He says, man, I appreciated, Dr. Sean Thomas's transparency and his telling the truth about his struggles getting to where he is. So confirmation, man, you are encouraging people as well.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm really happy to hear that. Now, I know you've been doing great work as a public defender, and with this new election, as I talk to my wife about these things every now and then, I know it does change or affects your job directly. I mean, it affects certain jobs a little more than others, but I know it affects your job directly as an attorney. What are some ways that this election, or the results, should I say, help or hurt your current profession as a defense attorney?
Well, I'm hoping it will help. The practice of criminal defense is complex. It's multi-layered. Again, because we are dealing with broken individuals, individuals who, and I have to be honest, if I had gone through the experiences of many of my clients, I don't know if I would have made it. Many of my clients are living, breathing, walking miracles. And there's not a lot of empathy for people who are broken, unfortunately. So as Pi could probably confirm and identify, and she has already, because I've heard her speak passionately about her work. We meet people who are broken, and between us and the judicial system, they're not getting dignity or affirmation. Just generally speaking, they're referred to as inmate, or the rap sheet is read out loud in court. So the defense attorney is the one affirming their dignity by calling them by their last name, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, creating a new narrative even without knowing them at arraignment. The first time they appear in court, we are identifying the positives, ties to the community, works part-time, parent, student, asking for leniency or asking for the opportunity for them to go home, even though the crime they're charged with, the judge has the right to set bail, seeking ways to make the experience better for them, not just the first time they appear, but throughout the process. Not disregarding their story or their perception of the way the world works, but working along with them to ensure they have a better result than when they entered in the system. And my hope is that, you know, our clients will get more empathy. I'm particularly concerned about the court and the way it's, you know, it's comprised right now, because so much of what we rely on, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth and the Sixth and the First, all having to do with, the right to express oneself, the right to counsel, the right against unreasonable search and seizure. These are things we are hoping the court will move more to the middle and the left with, because but for these laws, our clients won't have many defenses, because if police officers are allowed to stop and search people just by having hunches about their disposition to commit criminal activities, then young men and women of color or Latinx or people in marginalized communities are going to feel the wrath of the police force, which is not what I believe it should be designed to do. I don't believe because of the way you appear or the way you look, police officers should take an interest in you and violate your constitutional rights. So I'm hopeful with this election, notwithstanding how the Supreme Court is comprised, that we will have more empathy. We saw some with the bail reform where, through the legislator and Governor Cuomo, we weren't setting bail on all criminal charges. And that lowered the population of people who were in jail or incarcerated prior to resolving, because most people just could not afford bail. So they were in jail just simply because they were poor. But with bail reform, it allowed people to fight their cases on the outside, to continue to work, to continue to pick up children after school, to drop them off, things we take for granted. But once individuals are charged, these rights were gone out the window. And I am hoping and I'm hopeful that we can have a Supreme Court and an active legislative body, that seeks to ensure that the rights of all are respected.
Yeah. So you now live in Dutchess County. And I know that county very well, Poughkeepsie area. And with the Black Lives Matter movement, with all that's been happening in the news around the world, what's it like for you right now as a person of color, right, African-American man, interacting with your clients who, and if I know the area well enough, I believe I do, can be somewhat culturally diverse and sometimes not, based on where you are. What's the sense of feeling in Dutchess County in terms of race relations, and how does that affect your job as a defense attorney in the Hudson Valley?
Great question. I think one of the challenges I have is I'm wondering what my clients are thinking. I mean, the city of Poughkeepsie where I work is pretty diverse. So you have, African Americans, Jamaicans, Latinx, whites who come through the system, charged with various crimes. I have another small court where I serve during the evenings called Beekman, where majority of the people charged are white, and that community is a little more affluent. But many people engage our services. There's not a big cutoff. So, if you have, some type of income, but you indicate a need, you'll get a public defender. So here I am, a guy with a mohawk with an accent. I'm often wondering what they're thinking when I'm talking. I mean, I try to code switch, but it's unsuccessful. People hear it. Sometimes I try to mask the accent and they're like, you have a beautiful accent. Where are you from? And then suddenly the discussion has to do with, a judge even told me, Ryan, your disposition is so gentle. I don't know how to say no to anything you ask. So it's me wondering sometimes what they're thinking. But Hudson Valley, where I am, I think is primarily Republican in terms of the votes. The majority of members of the community are Republican. And we don't have, from the judges themselves, we don't have diversity there. I haven't seen a judge of color. Most of the judges are white men, and that has its own issue to navigate when I'm representing individuals. But it's challenging, one, because there's not a lot of empathy for people who are poor generally. Not a lot of empathy, not a lot of empathy for the stories of people who have hardships. So my work, as I indicated before, is a hybrid between social work, not only in terms of the way I advocate, looking at the person's history, looking at their redemptive value, my Christian teachings, my social work leaning comes into play when I speak on behalf of clients. But we also employ social workers in our office to create reports and tell stories about the individuals who are charged. So it's a combination of both of those things. But it is challenging. One, because where I am and where I serve, there are a number of jails. There is high investments in the probation office, which supervises individuals when they're not in jail. There are a number of police entities in the different cities. So there's heavy policing, heavy supervision. One has to be intentional, I believe, especially if you have history, about maintaining a clean record after you've been incarcerated or convicted previously, because there's such heavy supervision, and many of our clients are unable to meet or measure up to the requirements when they're on the outside, not because they're not good people, but most people don't do well under heavy supervision. And unfortunately, the way most probation offices are designed, the way the system is designed, there is not a lot of efforts, I believe, in the structures to have people be redeemed and live wholesome lives. You're not going to get a very good job if you have a criminal conviction. So it impacts your ability to earn. Certain felony convictions impact your ability to vote. So already you are on a different track. So when individuals are charged, I'm not only looking at their present or the past, I'm looking at the future, and it's daunting because so much of the systems and the structures aren't designed for people to live wholesome lives going forward.
That is so powerful. I'm speechless because I know from my wife's perspective the emotional attachment that comes with this job. And as you described from your perspective, being in that area, everyone's perspective of you is different, which I completely understand. My last question about the legal realm for you is I know that at least down here in Brooklyn, most of the public defenders work for an organization, right? Either work for the city or some kind of area that is funded by the city that allows them to give representation to anyone who does not or cannot afford. You being a private attorney, how does that differ? As in, when someone gets arrested and they say, if you don't have an attorney, we'll give you one, or one will be provided to you, is that still you? Or I'm not sure how you get paid from this if you're not with the state or with the city, etc. And do you feel that when that is assigned to you, when someone is assigned to your, or when you're assigned to somebody, is there any kind of stigma or any reverse stigma where they think that you're great because you're a private attorney as opposed to one that may be provided by the state? Because I know that sometimes when people say, oh, you have a public attorney given to you, their thoughts is, well, if they're free, how good can they be? And I know that that's a very big deal because all attorneys, are good, especially the ones that we have in certain areas like this, where that service is given to someone who may not actually be able to afford it, but it's given to them as a courtesy or a service due to, because of the state. So do you get that same experience, or does that happen differently for you upstate?
So my work as a public defender is full-time. So once I got hired, I had to close my private practice down. So I'm not allowed to take private cases. All my cases now are assigned by the county, and the county has a budget that covers our salary. So I'm a member of an office of public defenders who cover different courts, and our salaries covered by the county's budget. So I'm not allowed to take any cases on the side. I'm not allowed to represent any of my clients privately for pay. The county covers the budget, so that our clients don't have to worry about that. And with that being said, the volume is pretty high. When I started off, I had maybe 200 cases. And when my secretary at the time said, here's your office, these are your files, you have about 200, I thought, am I being punked? It was daunting, because when I was in private practice and I went to court, at most I would go with 2-3 files at a time. When I'm in court now, the calendar is huge. I have, up to 40 cases at a time, and I'm intimately familiar with each one. That happens over time. But you know what's happening with each, which entities are involved, whether somebody's being, screened for a program, or they're doing anger management. We have a lot of domestic violence cases, and those ticked up with COVID. So, did somebody violate an order of protection? We're dealing with numerous issues. And so that's covered. But in terms of your question about the perception of public defenders, I'll be honest, many individuals feel that we are not real attorneys. The fact that we offer the service for free on behalf of the county has its own stigma. So many of our clients believe that we are more interested in pleading them out rather than fighting cases. It's reasonable, but an unfair view, I feel, because I think public defenders do the greatest work. We are doing a lot with a little sometimes. We are tremendously resourced because we can hire investigators to speak to witnesses and complainants or people who are victims. We have social workers who can do reports, who can engage people in housing or get people in programs to give them better resolution with their cases. But the stigma is certainly there that perhaps we didn't go to real law schools, or the fact that we are serving the poor means we couldn't get better jobs. And that is, unfortunately, the perception of people who serve the poor. But I'll say many of our clients who come through the office get the best representation. They get empathy. They get a willing ear. They get advocacy in the court. Many of the clients I have had, even with rocky starts, and I've learned as an attorney to better deal with people, especially doing this kind of work, because many of them have been told or have been given the impression their word means nothing, their life means nothing, their future means nothing. And I have to affirm them. I have to validate even their opinions. And I have to advocate in court sometimes positions that I don't believe will get anywhere, but because the client asks me to do it, because that's the only opportunity that client has to drive the car. And if I can help them to accomplish that, then I'm building the relationship, improving the relationship. So that's something I had to learn in terms of my work, that even though I was the lawyer, but for grace, I could have easily been on the other side. And I'm the only one many times who's going to give empathy or affirm the client who is going through hardship. So the perception is there and it's reasonable, but I think, people who are represented by attorneys who cannot afford it, they get some of the best representation. I mean, that's what I've seen.
Folks, if you're just joining us at this time, episode 36 of the Deep More Today show, I'm here with public defender in Dutchess County, Ryan Sharpe, elder, and he's also the host of the What a Word podcast. Now, if you have not heard the What a Word podcast, it is just that, what a word. He brings on people who are sharing their own stories, and every single story is different. Every single testimony is different. Every single depiction of someone's journey is captivating. And Brian, I wanted you to just talk to people about what inspired you to do the show and why what a word for this podcast?
Well, I had been wanting to do a podcast for some time. It sounds like the anchor part of the segment where I've wanted to do a podcast for some time, but I didn't know where to start. That's the truth, though. I I had been listening to podcasts over the years and thought, man, this is a medium or a platform that can do a lot to improve the lives of others. And then you started yours, and I'd been a fan of yours, and I had been listening. And then COVID happened. And I thought, what better time to get engaged where I can inspire through conversation? Because that's the goal of my podcast, like yours, to inspire listeners through conversation. And you and I are from the faith community. We know so many individuals with compelling stories. And some of the stories I had no idea about until the actual interview. Like I thought I had known people's stories, and I'd ask a question and I was like, wow, I had no idea. So just getting the info, and as I indicated to listeners, Sean was very helpful. Learning to set up the platform and, learning to interview and learning to be an active listener. People have no idea the difficulties in doing these episodes every week. But Sean, I'm sure you can share stories about the challenges, but also how inspiring it is to release an episode and have people give you feedback. Like, I was going through this, or I was dealing with this challenge, or I listened to your podcast while driving, while working out, while working, and I'm inspired by what you do. And so it's been an honor for me to release episodes. And I had no idea about analytics. I just thought people who did podcasts released them and people would give feedback, but I didn't know you could keep track of listeners or places. This simple idea is now so far reaching. And I have listeners who engage me each week to say, keep going. I love what you do. Keep at it. Thank you for putting this guest on. I connected with his or her story. And it's been a joy. It's been a labor of love, I like to say. So that's in essence why I started. And during COVID, you and I could probably agree that people needed to hear good stories and have inspiration. People were waking up in our country not knowing what was going to happen on any given day. I mean, regardless of where you were on the spectrum, I think everyone, whether you love the government that we currently have leadership, you wanted better for your family. You wanted a better hope, a better future. You wanted to teach them things like dignity and character and truth telling. And you wanted inspiration from somewhere. And I believe what you and I do, we're filling that need, and we're doing it with different frequencies, because even though your show may be a little different from mine, we're still meeting the needs of individuals who need to be inspired. So labor of love, honored to do it. And it's just been a blessing.
Well, I love the show, Ryan. I really do. I hear it every single week.
Thank you.
And I'm always happy to see that you're growing and that things are just continuing to move forward with the show. And folks, I'm not gonna lie to you, I started the show before Ryan, and Ryan and I are now on the same episode number-wise. So Ryan was hustling. He was getting these episodes in, which I'm very excited about. But like you said, it's definitely a labor of love. But every time you put one out there, you're just so happy to share it. And it's great getting feedback from people when they actually see it. And it's also good to see people who are interviewed who, I was on a podcast years ago for the first time, and I was so nervous, so happy to do it. But everyone should be on a podcast. Everybody has a story. So it's not something that should be exclusive. I mean, everyone should be able to share their story in a way that can be put out there for it to stay there forever. I mean, it's a timestamp now. These episodes that we're putting out there are going to be there, hopefully, for years to come, where our kids can listen to us talk to these people and also be inspired by them. So
good point, man. It's our legacy,
It's a legacy, exactly.
It is.
It's a legacy. It's a legacy. So, Ryan, as you know, I know you purchased my book, Be More Today, and I appreciate you so much. And in the book, we talk about these steps to greatness, things you want to start doing, stop doing, goals for our lives. But the theme is always about the same, about being more today. So I'm going to ask you, like I asked everybody else, when you hear the phrase, be more today, what does that phrase mean to you?
The phrase "be more today" for me means that there is always, and you guys capture it well when you say the rest of your life should be the best of your life. I love that caption that you guys do towards the end on each episode. I think that is the essence of being more today. Many of us had bad starts, missteps, decisions we could have made differently. But your future, your going forward can be better. Not only because you have the potential, but because there are others who can support your dreams to have a better life. And there are others who won't judge you based on your history. We are most often harder on ourselves than others are. And I think being more today simply means, regardless of what happened in the past, we can build on those mistakes. And I think we had a great example this past weekend hearing about the work of Stacey Abrams. She lost the election when she ran for governor. And this lady had many opportunities then. She could have gotten a really great position, just living her life, just doing what she does best. But she thought, I could improve the lives of others. I've learned some lessons by this defeat. And we learned 800,000 voters were registered due to her advocacy and the organizations she started. So it simply says to me, regardless of your losses, your missteps, your trauma, your hardships, there is an opportunity to improve on that going forward. And that happens with prayer, with therapy, with support networks, but the opportunity is there. And I tell even my own clients, your record, your history is not who you are. Even this charge, in my mind, is not who you are. This is just your charge. This is just your history. I believe the rest of your life can be the best of your life. So that's what being more today means to me.
Now, Ryan, in the book, I talk about people doing the steps to greatness. I call them S2Gs, basically a start, a stop, and a goal for your life for the year or for the next year. So what's one thing that you wanted to start doing this year or want to start doing for 2021?
There's so many, Sean, but I'll tell you one right up front. I am trying to get out of debt. Just last Sunday, my wife and I met with a financial planner. She was also a guest on the podcast, and we started identifying ways that we can improve our credit. We're doing pretty well, but we have hopes and plans for our family that, the way the society is set up, if you don't have generational wealth, then you have to be that person that does it for those coming behind. So we've begun having discussions about improving, our credit and possibly purchasing some real estate so that we can have something prepared for our children and for ourselves. Our lives can have better quality. And I'm also looking at engaging more with therapy. I did it before when I was preparing for practice. It was something somebody suggested would be a good idea to do. But as you identify in my line of work, we deal a lot with compassion fatigue, where if you are empathetic and you connect with people, there's a risk that you can be emotionally impacted by the struggles of others. So I'm thinking of engaging more in personal therapy. I believe it's something that can be more useful. And I believe it's something that, as I identified in being more today, can help more of us to connect to the better part of us by addressing our triggers, addressing our shortcomings, addressing things that have us feeling lower than we should feel. That is something I'm hoping, I've reached out to an individual already, and I'm going to engage his services hopefully going forward, because I believe everybody needs a checkup from the neck up. And certainly doing more exercise. There were Sunday mornings like this where I would turn on Dr. Sean Thomas and I would engage, and I felt so good. But the last number of Sundays, true transparency, I haven't. So I plan to do more physical activity as well. I think the full body has to be engaged in some activity to function well. So I know you asked for one, man, but I have a number of things I plan to be more today and to do better. Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah. What's one thing you want to stop doing for this year or for 2021?
Um, I I have to do better with bedtime scheduling. Naturally, with all that's going on in our country, I've been so engaged in the political process and going to bed late, getting up early. I don't have a set routine with rest. Many of your listeners will probably identify that you and I are from the same faith community. So the Sabbath gives us the opportunity to recalibrate, so to speak. But I have to do a better job just getting the 6 to 8 hours of sleep daily. I haven't been doing a good job of that. And I want to also read more. I believe I could, if I'm organized, read at least one book a week. I believe engaging in reading, fiction, nonfiction, devotionals like yours will do more for my mind and more for my ability to inspire others. So that's something. Normally, I'm reading books because I'm going to interview the guests, so I'm reading the book, but I have to find a way to do more reading so that I'm, engaged and I'm keeping up with issues and I'm more empathetic and I'm more in touch with, what's hurting people who are marginalized, etc.
And then one goal you may have, and it may be the realty thing, or the working out already, but one goal you may have for 2021 or for the rest of this year.
Oh man, I'm thinking of I bought a guitar, an acoustic guitar a number of years ago, and it's collected a lot of dust. I'm thinking both of my children do piano lessons. I'm thinking of picking up an instrument. I've indicated to you before that there's no place like Kingsborough in terms of worship. The church that I currently attend, the worship is not like Kingsborough, but it's an unfair comparison because Kingsborough is a unique place. It's heaven on earth. So I hope to engage in guitar lessons so that I can lead worship. That is my goal for 2021.
Wow. Ryan, go for it. I remember this, my Uncle Joe, and I don't talk about my family on these shows, but I probably will next season a little more. My Uncle Joe was from the West Indies, and I remember going to his house in Queens. We would go to his house for Friday worship, and he had a guitar. And every Friday he would lead worship with that guitar. I was probably maybe 5 years old, but I remember Uncle Joe and Aunt Fina singing, and us all singing, him playing that guitar. And there's something about it. I mean, I played saxophone for a while. It's over here in the corner, but there's something about the guitar and worship that makes it. There's something about it, and maybe a West Indian thing. I'm not gonna lie to you, because it's not a country thing in that aspect. It's definitely like a cultural thing where something like the guitar can really bring a certain energy to the worship. So I affirm that. I say go for it. I can see you rocking out with the kids and your kids on the piano too. I think it could really work.
Because you and I sing, Sean. I've heard you singing during the workouts, what have you, man. But Kingsborough had such talent. We were not gonna crack that ceiling, man. Yeah, but I think I see an opportunity here where I can engage in worship and I think it's important for our kids to see us participating and engaged in church or in ministries. And you do that. We had opportunities to do that at Kingsborough. And I'd want that for my kids, for them to see daddy engaged. My wife deserves that, as, to see her husband leading not only in church, but at home. And that's something else that, needs to be improved, the devotion, leading that, calling the family to worship. But certainly, man, I'm hoping to get that done for 2021.
I see you. And the beard
some basic chords.
Yeah, with the beard, it's gonna work. I see it. Yeah. Ryan, any final tips you want to share with aspiring defense attorneys like yourself, or anyone who is looking to get into the law and may not know how to make that first step or what to do to get there?
Find a mentor. I know it's difficult, especially for people of color, to find someone you connect with. But if it comes down to it, just finding someone who has the willingness to guide you through your journey, whatever the journey is. Because when I started out, certainly I just wanted to learn the different aspects of law. And I had mentors, people who were proficient in those fields who walked me through it. But for those who are looking at criminal defense as a possible vocation in terms of practice, I would say the Public Defender's Office, Legal Aid, Brooklyn Defenders, Bronx Defenders, any of these non-for-profit or county or city employment agencies are probably the best ways to go about doing it. You'll have a more expansive caseload in terms of what you're seeing. I don't believe one should only be able to get experience or representation because you have the income. I think if you are an attorney, you can certainly see the best of what criminal defense has to offer in terms of the defense, legal aid, public defender work, where people have nowhere else to turn. You're going to be impacting lives in ways that you can't imagine. And I'll also like to say, on your own journey, whether it's law, whether it isn't, God has a way of bringing us to where we need to get to. You may have identified in your own life landmarks or symbols that point to where success is or where it leads. And God may be taking you down a different path. And you may be in a holding pattern. It doesn't mean you're less successful. It just means that God is working something else out. There's no one track to success. God has a number of roads. You've seen that meme where you're thinking it's a straight path and God has, a zigzag, and he has a number of ways to help you to accomplish the goal for your life. And it'll blow your mind when you get to that point, because I never imagined I would be here today doing what I'm doing, but God worked it out. I was just open. I kept my options open and I was willing to move when he said move. And that's something I identified I wasn't doing a good job of when I was younger. I didn't know how to wait. And it's still something I have to work on. But God used my impatience. He used my missteps. He gave me a testimony through the challenges with the bar exam, which I share whenever I have an opportunity. And now I'm doing work that I wouldn't trade for the world. It gets me up in the morning. It inspires me. It's challenging, I won't lie, but God has really been good to me and my family.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Ryan. Where can people connect with you on social media or otherwise?
Okay, so on Instagram, it's at Sir Sharpe, and Sharpe has an E on the end, at SIRSHARPE. It's also at What a Word Podcast. That's also my handle. I'm on Facebook, Ryan Sharpe. LinkedIn, Ryan Sharpe, Twitter, at Sir Sharpe. And those are ways that, you can follow my journey.
Ryan Sharpe, thank you so much for being on the show today. Folks, if you have not checked out the What a Word podcast, go online right now. Instagram, Facebook, like it, subscribe, Anchor, subscribe. We're podcast buddies. We're elders here. We got to support each other, and you will be inspired, I guarantee you. Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity, man. I had a blast, and keep up the good work, man. You were the trailblazer, and we're following, man. We're following your journey as well. Keep up the good work. I'm inspired by not only what you're doing, but Terrence as well. We're the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday guys. We're that triumvirate. You hit it Monday, I'm Tuesday, Terrence is Wednesday. And I think between the different platforms, we are inspiring and encouraging others. So keep up the good work as well, man. You're an inspiration.
That's so true. That's so true. I appreciate that. Thank you so, so much. Folks, if you have been here the whole time, episode 36 is now in the books. And don't forget our quotation for today. Growth is never by mere chance. It is the result of forces working together. The same way we came together and made our votes known, change was done. And we got to make sure that we continue to do that. It's not over. we're just getting started now. So we got to keep pushing. For those of you who had all kinds of talks, you want things to get done, now's your chance to put your money where your mouth is and get out there, be part of your community, get out there and start volunteering, do whatever you can to help us get better, to make America the way that we want it to be. And if you heard Ryan Sharpe's testimony at all, if you go out there and you're seeing struggles, you will get through them. Just be patient and continue to push forward. And let's just try to be better, better people for our families, like we're talking about on this show, and better people for our community and for our future. Again, folks, Be More Today is found on everywhere, but just check out our website, BeMoreToday.com, for our music, book, podcast information. And if you want to be a sponsor or to support us, you can email us at BeMoreToday, that's BeMore2day @gmail.com, or anything on social media as well. You can find us. No problem. The Words for Life podcast is every Wednesday, like Ryan said, and check out his podcast every single Tuesday, and the Be More Today show every single Monday. 3 days, 3 inspiring words. You can't miss it. Start your week out right with us, and we'll get you through the rest of the week. Folks, as I always say, have a good day. Have a good night. Have a great life, and continue to take your steps to greatness to be the best version of you. Peace.
Living life with nothing to prove.